Hey guys, sorry, crazy stuff right now. Apologize. We're kind of all on the go. We're trying to get a quick show in here while we can today, and because there's a lot going on. But let's start with let's just why don't we just start off here and get going, and I will do the dates. And Mike's driving. Be careful, Mike. And
I'm always
and
careful.
here we go. All right, ready? All right, today's date. Of course, I don't know. Monday, June 6th. There you go. There you go. All right, hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, June 6th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and this is the 78th anniversary of D-Day. So for all our veterans, we thank you.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Michael, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. And today we're a little bit early and a little bit maligned, but we'll start by we do and then Mike and Ross so at the combine. So we have to get into that too. But I want to start with the other day. Ross, Rangers Tampa. I mean, I'm sitting out there thinking I was starting to calculate what happened. It's like how quickly do the Stanley Cup Finals have to start?
I know we all were thinking.
Just started to think about that.
I didn't think they were going to win yesterday's game. The fact that they went up 2-0, I was surprised, but I wasn't counting on winning that one. But I'm telling you, people are crazy in their overcorrecting for Tampa too, because like I got a text, well, now this series is over for the Rangers. Oh, it's over because they lost with 41 seconds to go in the game. Tampa got a goal. Now the series is over. I mean, Rangers still have home ice. It's like there's a lot of craziness going on, but I enjoy this series because I just think it's still a roller coaster and it's fun.
Kev, because I was
take over. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was trying to get some yard work in between periods. So I didn't know how Tampa Bay got the power play early in the third. I assume it was from all the stuff that happened at the end of the second. But I really thought that the refereeing in this game was extremely pro Tampa in the sense that they would start things, the Rangers would retaliate, and the Rangers would get the penalty. Trouba got called 2 or 3 times for things I thought were retaliatory. So if you give Tampa Bay an inch, they're going to take a mile.
Yeah, my take on this game was different, I think, than on most people. To me, Tampa Bay felt like they were holding on the entire game. Like they still have the will, they have the understanding of what it takes to win. So that's still an advantage for them. But, I think they're concerned about the Rangers, and they're playing too careful. Like, they're not playing the same way we've seen them play in the past. And I really felt like the Rangers were going to win that right up until the time they got the winning goal. Like I thought, the Rangers would get the goal. And even then, if you remember with, there was less than 40 seconds to go. Adam Fox had the puck maybe 30 feet out the high slot. And I'm thinking he's going to either put it in the net or it's going to be on net and the rebound's going to go to someone. They're going to tie it up. Like that's how I feel. Like it feels like the Rangers are in command of this game. And I really felt the series, and I really felt like they were going to win that game. Even when it was 2-2, I thought, the Rangers are going to win it in overtime or whatever. So I was actually kind of surprised. And, I don't discount the fact that, Tampa is still the Tampa Bay Lightning. They know what to do, and they're still a good team. But, they just aren't playing with the level of confidence. And I think that's because of the way the Rangers are playing. I mean, the Rangers are playing very confidently. And, it feels like I don't want to say it wasn't the same as in Carolina in that deciding game when I felt like Carolina was trying not to lose. It wasn't like that, but I just felt like Tampa always seemed like they were holding on.
It's interesting. I mean, I kind of felt the same way a little bit, Kevin, in terms of the fact that I couldn't believe they took 50 shots on goal. When I was looking at it, it's like it didn't. And Tampa had.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe they took 50 shots on goal because I couldn't remember Shesterkin making a whole lot of incredible saves. Like there were definitely some great saves, but I didn't remember him normally 50 shots on goal. You're like, man, Shesterkin stole that game for the Rangers, but I didn't feel like he did. And if the Rangers would have won that game, I wouldn't I mean, just the 50 shots were impressive, but I agree that I think it almost feels like Tampa's intimidated by the Rangers' speed, which is really weird because Tampa's fast. They're a fast team, but
they're not fast without point though. That's the thing that's really kind of hurt them. Is their overall pace? Yeah. their overall pace without Braden Point has hurt them. Actually, I give Kreider credit too. He took responsibility for one of the goals, and that's pretty good. I mean, again, he should be the captain of the team. The fact that he's not makes no sense. But I just feel like without Braden Point, they don't have a real speed guy other than Cirelli. And, even someone like Stamkos, he's basically relying on his one-timer to score. He's not scoring really any other way. He's not the Steve Stamkos of 5 years ago. So, I mean, dangerous, yeah. Kucherov, dangerous on the power play. Anytime he's got the puck on the power play, you have to worry about it. But it really has gotten down to the point where, Kevin makes a point where, hey, in these games, it shouldn't be this close if Tampa's intending on winning the series.
And even if they get Point back at some point in the series, which I doubt. I know they keep wheeling him out on ice, and everybody keeps video showing the video of it. He's not going to be at top speed because he's coming off either a high ankle sprain or some sort of Achilles injury. So they're not going to be able to inject some speed into their lineup. I mean, they were so desperate that they put Riley Nash in the lineup, and nobody's going to confuse him with Eric Hayden. But I'll tell you this. This is the thing that I think is a concern for the Rangers. They lose Ryan Strome in the first period. He tries to come back. He clearly couldn't. If that's a long-term injury, they move Kopp to the middle. But Russ, the well of depth in terms of the Rangers, you're talking Greg McKegg and players like that. They're not very deep. So if they have to get into the 13th and 14th forward, they're in trouble.
I'll say this. Strome is a good player. He hasn't been great lately. If they move Kopp in the middle, which they will, and they put McKegg on the fourth line, they're not going to get hurt that badly. They're not, because Kopp's good on faceoffs, and McKegg is a really decent fourth-line center, especially when you don't have to rely on him for 15 minutes. So I think they can get past that. Actually, again, this game was so minute as far as why the Rangers lost. And penalties, sure. And did some of them not go their way? Sure. Did Tampa have a game plan of running over Shesterkin? They did. There's no question they did, because they didn't even try and stop. Now, Vetrano didn't either, but Vetrano I don't think was necessarily trying to run Vasilevsky. I think he was trying to skate as hard as he could, and then realized, I've got nowhere to go here. But
he was pushed by McDonough too.
Yeah, but Riley Nash went right into Shesterkin like it was so obvious, and really the first couple were. So I don't know if that's going to be a prevailing thing with Tampa, but I will tell you, I have never seen John Cooper look as perplexed as he did at times on the bench.
All right, I need to bring up something, because Russ and I talked about this on Saturday night when we looked up what the time of the game was yesterday. And again, when we heard the NHL was going back to ESPN, this was the thing I was concerned about. Yesterday's game was a 3 p.m. start on ESPN, and purely the reason why was because the NBA final was on at 8 o'clock on ABC. And I'm sure the NHL didn't want any kind of conflict with the NBA final, but that prevents the NHL from having a nighttime game where, especially on the East Coast, where I'm sure the ratings would have been much higher than a Sunday afternoon in June. A 3 p.m. start, I think it costs the NHL ratings because ESPN is being subservient to the NBA instead of the NHL.
Kevin?
I don't think the NHL ratings aren't significant enough that it's that big a deal. I know they don't want to go against the NBA because they are going to lose that anyway. So I don't, in the grand scheme of things, I see your point. I mean, wouldn't you always want it on a Saturday night, game? But I don't know. It's not like they hit it out of the park whether they play at 8:00 or 3:00, and you always want to avoid the bigger draw, and the NBA is a bigger draw. So
yeah, I mean, even if they were on NBC, right?
I think your point is a fair one, is what I'm saying, but I don't think in the grand scheme of things.
Here's some ratings. So the first round, which we all agreed was amazing, had the average game at 768,000 viewers, an increase of 26% over last year. So even though I agree with Mike, you know what? It's still, they're getting more visibility on these bigger channels than they were, even if they're in a better time slot on the other channels. That's what it's boiling down to.
Yeah, and I think even if you're on NBC, do you really want to go against the NBA?
No.
So it's like, to me, it doesn't. I don't think that's really an ESPN issue, really, as much as it's just the fact that the NBA's finals is happening at the same time. It's all you can. And if it's a Stanley Cup final.
And I don't think people truly understand how much bigger, because a lot of hockey fans are not NBA fans, and they just don't realize how big an entity the NBA is. Like, it's just such a beast. Yeah, it is. You just don't want to go up against them. But, I mean, like always, it seems like, we're catering toward the, NBA, but, that's just a fact of our existence.
It's a fact of life. At this point, as NHL reporters and / fans and everything else, there's a pecking order, and the NHL is never going to win in that pecking order.
Yeah.
How many people watch an NBA game?
I'll look.
Yeah, I think that's a.
That rating number has to be really high.
Although I'll tell you, Kev, they did put the Ranger game in the Pro Bowlers Tour slot, which didn't make me thrilled either. But
well, I don't know what the ratings are now, but the PBA used to do better than we did. So I have no idea and the PBA now is back on network television.
Come on, Earl Anthony had a hell of a fan base. Come on.
Yeah.
The guy with the big afro, Mike and I did for a minute.
I mean, that used to be the thing that, they would say to, shut up hockey fans, is that PBA ratings were better than the NHL ratings.
NBA is getting 3.7 million per game.
Yeah. So they're about 5 times, what we are. And years and years ago, I remember we lost out in the time period to rodeo. I think that was a low watermark.
Right.
That was, bad. That might have been the sports channel era. I don't remember exactly, but
it's probably the sports channel era. Oh man.
So,
all right. So Mike,
hold on.
The
PBA is averaging 991,000 on ESPN, so they are beating hockey.
Yeah, they used to. They used to kick our butt.
I'm speechless.
So Russ, don't make fun of bowlers. Never make fun of bowlers.
No. This is really a plus for bowling, but I thought we had. I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, but I thought we had passed bowling.
I did too. This makes me sad.
Yeah. It's really depressing.
Hey, though I will say, when I was a little kid, I watched Chris Schenkel on Nelson Burton Jr. with my grandmother. My grandmother, we'd watch it on Saturday afternoons, right before the Wide World of Sports, when the guy would fall off the ski jump thing. So
Mark Roth, Earl Anthony, all those guys. Yeah, I remember that. So
yeah.
So actually, I bet the Bowling Buzzcast gets better ratings than us too. So just we're not going to worry about too much about that. Wherever that show is going on right now. Anyway, Mike and Russ, you guys are at the combines. I heard a lot about the other Hughes, the non-related Hughes. I heard a lot about him that he was killing it there.
Well, yes, the Jack Hughes, who I think, and once Russ gets off the phone, I think projects towards the end of the first round. There's a lot of speculation that the Canadians, with his dad Kent Hughes, might draft him. And one of the stories we heard at the combine was that Jack Hughes had sort of asked his dad to leave the room when he did his interview, but then his dad came back in. So, I think for just comfort level purposes. But Russ, you heard that story about Jack Hughes, right? There you go.
Yeah. Actually, I posted the video. I think the Canadians made more out of it than they should have, because if their point was they didn't care what Jack Hughes, the kid, thought about this, then they shouldn't have asked him, is it okay if your dad's in here? And he said, I prefer him not to be. And then they were like, well, it doesn't matter. You don't get a choice here. Like, why even go there?
Don't ask. Just as overall narratives, not specific, before we get into specifics. The thing that was interesting was we heard that Montreal was they were the winner of the weird question of the week, which was, if you were an animal, what kind of animal were you? And they asked that to every player, and some of you said, well, on the ice I'm a lion, on off the ice I'm a wolf, whatever. It was just, I don't know what the hell.
I don't know if they were the winner, Mike. Remember, I can't remember the team, but teams were asking Rutger McGroarty's teammates if he was fat or big boned.
Right. Well, they didn't specify what team that was, but they were asking if a teammate.
They were asking him that.
Yeah, if a teammate was fat, and it's like the only thing I could draw from that is that they were trying to see whether they would defend their teammate or not.
Right.
So, in terms of a differing process from other teams, the winner of that is the Toronto Maple Leafs, because apparently what they did was they had a video montage set up, and basically they would stop the video, say of a player going in on a breakaway. They would stop the video and ask the player what decision they would make, and then they would say, well, he would shoot high, and then the player would shoot low, and they would ask why, justify, or try to why they would make that decision. So it was sort of a test of decision making. It was offensive and defensive.
Well, the Coyotes did something similar too, right, Mike? They had video too.
Right, but
they were the only two that had video.
The only two that, and the players seemed to like it, because essentially you had 30 other teams with like a panel of people asking them questions, and that was something different. So it was sort of refreshing to them.
And just so Eck knows, the best I could find out about the Flyers process, besides Danny Briere being there, which I guess some kids know him, so that's good, is they were friendly.
Yeah, friendly. Good. Well, I guess it's not being friendly.
Montreal was tough. They were friendly. Take it for what
Montreal
you
was
want.
tough, yeah.
But this is what, and I'll let Russ speak for himself. But this is what we drew out of what happened on Friday, which was they brought out, I think it was the six top-rated prospects, and let's just say the narrative that is trying to be sold out there is that Shane Wright is at times on the ice is lazy, because he tried to explain it. So that at certain points during the play, I'm not going 100%, because he recognizes what's going on. He's sort of conserving energy, and that was twisted by a lot of media by saying he's lazy. And then we had Slavkovsky come out, and Russ, did you get like the narrative? There's a good chance Slavkovsky wants to be the first pick, and the narrative's out there that he could be the first pick based on.
There were writers that just wanted to write that anyhow, no matter what, just to sort of create this fake controversy. But with the Shane Wright thing, we've all seen players do this. Adam Fox does it a lot. He goes down the ice, he has the puck, all of a sudden he slows up, and he's cycling the puck back and forth on his stick because he's looking for that open ice to make a play. Shane Wright does the same thing. And so, you don't want to go full speed on that, because if you go full speed in the zone, they're going to be on you. Sometimes at the top of the circles there's room. And I think that is where it's being misconstrued, I think.
Yeah, every great player Gretzky did that. We do live in an era where everybody has to move it, where we have like the McKinnon, the McDavid era where everybody goes full speed all the time. But that's not necessarily those guys. Those guys do skate full speed most of the time, but that's not every player, and that's definitely not guys who are better playmakers. Playmakers don't do that.
Yeah, when Ryan Suter was draft age, the scouts, some of them confused composure with a lack of intensity. He was just one of those even-keeled guys that looked the same no matter if all hell was breaking loose, and they saw that as perhaps he lacked the passion, but that's how he plays. He plays very, as we know now, having watched him in the NHL, he's very composed, and he had to end up having to defend himself.
So I did ask Slafkovsky about his defensive part of his game, and he acknowledged that that's something that he really has to work on. But the thing is, if there are teams that believe Slafkovsky can be a center,
right,
he can't be a center right away in the AHL or the NHL. You can't just throw him in the AHL defensively deficient and turn him into a center there either. So I don't know how that process is going to begin.
Now, there were some tidbits that we found out. Brad Lambert, who is probably projected to I would say go to be between, say, 10 and 15 in the first round. That's probably a conservative estimate, but he could move up. He does not have a contract to play in Finland next year, so he could be one of these 18-year-old kids who goes right into the American Hockey League, or even in the NHL if the team thinks he's ready to do it. But it's the with some of these players that complicates their availability. If the team thinks that they can play in North America, they're contractually obligated to a team in Europe. But Russ, I don't think Lambert's ready to play in the NHL, but I mean, if he can play with say he gets drafted by the Islanders and he can play in Bridgeport, that's something that's available to them.
That's where his playing up in age right now may suit him, that he can do it in the AHL, but it still might mute his scoring because he hasn't had any scoring when he's played up in age. And so that's where the team that gets him, that's why I think the Islanders might be that team, would be willing to deal with that, knowing that that's part of the situation. But there's something else bigger here, Kev, and Philip Masar was another one. The Euros now are all basically saying, yeah, I could play in juniors, but I'm going to just keep my options open. I'm going to see. A lot of them are angling towards the AHL and missing juniors, or at least that's the impression I got from 2 or 3 of them. But basically by not talking about, hey, wanting to play in junior hockey. So we may start to see guys skipping steps here.
Yeah, unless they're in Sweden, where they have their own deal, and they can't do that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've always felt you should let the players do what's best for them personally, instead of a one size fits all.
Right.
Because some of them would benefit from playing in the AHL, and it's not always easy to know, as Russ can testify to. So exactly what would be best for them. So that's why there's just kind of a blanket rule. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong in this, but I would stay away from the Islanders with Lambert in the organization as coach. And if I was the Canadians, I would stay clear of Hughes.
The Canadians might, but I don't think the Islanders will. It's his uncle.
I mean, I get that, but
you can keep an eye on him in Bridgeport. I think. All right, I'm going to say this in the most delicate way possible. I think it's good if a family member is close to Brad Lambert. I think that would help him feel better about things. He's been playing close to home for a long time now. Yeah, and I think that would actually be good for him.
Well,
at the start, at least.
Kev, I was in a lot of the interviews, and in terms of a player who was sort of submissive and meek, and not weak, but just very, you could barely hear him talk. He was just very, careful in terms of his answers. It was Brad Lambert. Russ picked up on it. I picked up on it. It was sort of strange, but I mean, I think maybe physically he's ready for the AHL. I'm not sure if he's emotionally or maturity-wise ready for the AHL. So, I mean, that'll be something that is determined by the team that drafts him, but he is available if they want to go that way.
Well, it's interesting that, he's fallen in, terms of the ratings for a lot of the teams. Although that's the reason why some people think that, he might go a little bit higher, because you think you're getting a bargain. Because at the start of the year, last summer, people were talking maybe he's a top 5 kid.
Well, so Russ made the point when we were talking on Saturday. It's like he was doing great at the World Junior before the World Junior got shut down, and had he continued to play like he was, he probably would be in the top 5. But
he would have been at least the top 10 pick had the World Juniors continued, because he started out looking like the best player in the World Juniors, and he knew it too. Like, he told me that when I had a private interview with him. And so, yeah, that was a factor. Kev, I also did some intel on Steve Yzerman, and he actually did speak in interviews this time. He wasn't just lurking in the corner.
Interesting.
Yeah, and players were obviously aware of him in there, and there were a couple that said, "Yeah, it was an honor to talk to Mr. Yzerman," and we had talked with a number of the players who project to be around where Detroit picks. The interesting thing was, and again, this is another narrative that we thought might have been done in the NHL, but I think continues to be something, is the prejudice against the small player. With Savoy, who's not exactly the biggest kid in the world, with a kid like Lane Hudson, who's projected to be a late first round pick, who, by the way, I think he had the most pull-ups at the combine.
He was great in 2 events. Yeah,
he had 18 pull-ups. So he's strong, but he's only 5'8" and 165, 170 pounds.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Lane Hudson with the NTDP defenseman.
Yeah, now he compares, he models himself after Torrey Krug and Adam Fox. Adam Fox is not an extremely big defenseman, but he only talked to about half the teams. Yeah. And Savoy, I mean, the based on talent, he probably should be 4th or 5th, but he could slip maybe closer to 10 because teams are, they don't think he can play center, or they don't think he's big enough. And that prejudice in this league is still there, in spite of examples of Torrey Krug and Goudreau and smaller players. They're still
but the problem is he's a center. Like, at the trade deadline, how often do you hear, we got to go out and get a small center?
No, that's true.
You're always looking for a bigger center. And I can tell you, living here in Detroit, that one of the issues for the Red Wings, they had Pius Suter was their number 2 center. He had a good year. Mm-hmm. He had a good year. However, how many times during the course of the year did Dylan Larkin said, well, this is another example where we played a physical team and we had trouble. They had trouble against physical teams. Well, that second line with Suter and Robbie Fabre, who plays hard, but Robbie Fabre is 5'10", 5'9", and they had Zadine on the other wing. It wasn't a physical enough line to compete against some of the lines. So I think
how do we know in 3 or 4 years it'll be the same? We don't.
Well, I think at center you want a bigger player because, and this is my, why I think they view it this way. Because more often than not, you're going to find bigger centers because that's the way the league has gone over the last 25 years. So I do think at center, I think they're more comfortable taking guys on the wing. Johnny Gaudreau is a winger.
Yeah. I mean, Savoy on the wing, which he has been playing, will still be an all-star winger. I mean, that's not even an issue.
And it also goes to defense, Kevin. I think you were the one who said that teams out there, they have room for one small defenseman, but not more than one.
Right.
And, now we don't know whether 3 or 4 years down the line, like Russ just said, there will be room for more than one small defense. I mean, I know Boston had Krug and Grzelcyk at the same time, and now Krug went to St. Louis and Grzelcyk stayed with Boston. They surrounded those guys with guys like Brandon Carlo and bigger defensemen to overcompensate. And they always had Chara playing with Krug. So unless you have giants playing next to them, maybe that quota of one small defenseman is something that's going to maintain in the league for a while.
But there was some puzzling stuff, Kev, like Jack Devine, who won a championship with Denver. Is 5'11". He's about 175. He's not, the strongest kid yet. He had 19 points in 36 games as a true freshman, like a true freshman. That's really hard to do. And it's somewhere between 11 and 16 teams talk to him. That's it. And you kind of wonder, that's a guy who you don't have to sign right away. He's already won a championship. He's had a great program. And a lot of teams just didn't even talk to him.
Yeah. And you always see the reverse of that too. Always, every year, near the bottom of the first round, somebody takes somebody who's 6'5" who was projected at 38 or 39 or 40 because they just think, let's take a chance on a big guy.
Right. Oh yeah.
Right. And okay, a team like Montreal, who's got, I think, 5 second-round picks, I'll bet you anything with a couple of those picks in the second round, they're going to take some 6'7" guy who's a project.
Yeah.
Because they can, somebody who either is in Sweden or Finland or in American college, and they hope that after 4 years, the guy turns into a monster. It makes sense. I don't think they're going to use all 14 of their picks, but they might take a risk or two, not in the first round, but maybe in the second round on a player like that.
Yeah, but you see that go both ways because sometimes, they take a guy in the 4th round who's real small because they think, maybe he'll pan out, maybe he'll be Paul Correa, So you do see them taking chances, and I mean you're right. It's usually someone who has a lot of picks, like not that they believe that they're wasting the pick, but just in case they are, they want to make sure that they have guys that are safe picks.
Now, go ahead, Russ.
I was going to say one more thing. So what? Arizona's got 2 first-rounders, it looks like.
Yes, they've got the 31st or 32nd pick, and a pick at the bottom of the 1st and the 3rd overall.
But what I think they're doing, Kev, based on what Philip Masar told me, who I have ranked around 26, and that means he could go around that 31, 32. He said that Arizona had the most interest in him, and he's a Slovak kid who I think is like a diamond in the rough, and he's just starting to get going here. He's played against men last year. If that happens, and because he's 5'10", then you could almost guarantee that Arizona is going to take someone with size, whether it's one of the defensemen or one of the bigger forwards.
Now, yesterday, Patrice Bergeron was awarded the Selke Trophy, 5th time he won that. So he's now ahead of Bob Gainey. And if there's ever, please, Patrice Bergeron, as soon as he retires and the time period passes, he's in the Hall of Fame, no doubt. The interesting thing, Kev, is that he was spotted in Boston over the weekend with a cast on his left arm because he apparently had some sort of off-season surgery to repair something. The Boston Bruins, the news that came out over the weekend, Charlie McAvoy out 6 months with a shoulder reconstruction, Matt Grzelcyk out 5 months with the other shoulder or the right shoulder reconstruction, Mike Riley out 3 months with another injury, Brad Marchand had a hip surgery, he's out 6 months, and I was talking to somebody, and it's like Boston's in tank mode. It's like they've lost like their best scorer, their top 2 of their top defensemen. If Bergeron retires, which we don't know what's going to happen or not, they're in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes.
Yeah, no, they're not that far, but because those players are all going to be back at some point,
right?
So, and that division, if you look at the teams there, the only team that I think is going to be significantly better next year is Buffalo. And they're going to be the way they were at the end of the season when they were pretty competitive.
Right.
So I don't see anybody making a run in that division on Boston, provided the players come back when they're supposed to, in terms of their projection. So, there's still a good, solid team. Will they be able to win early? Maybe not, but I don't think they're in tank mode.
The only thing I can give here, I have a little inside info because I've been called to replace Danny Briere on a show today because he had to go and be part of the interview process for the coach. So the Flyers certainly are bringing in another coach today or tomorrow, and he has to be ready for that. So we'll see who that is. I don't know.
They have been the most aggressive in terms of interviewing for coaches. You have no idea who's interviewing. The only person that we know, the team that we know have interviewed a coach, I believe, and the only other one other than Philadelphia is Winnipeg interviewed Trotz.
Right, that's true.
Either no one else is interviewing yet, or they just haven't leaked out. But there's been half a dozen guys we know.
I know. I think they've hidden it. I think other teams have hidden it.
Yeah, Winnipeg's interviewed Trotz, and I think they mentioned on 32 Thoughts on Saturday that they'd interviewed Scott Arniel, who they brought in as an assistant coach, but he might be a fallback if they don't get the coach that they want. Also Jim Montgomery, and I've heard Randy Carlisle's name mentioned in Winnipeg.
Philly interviewed Montgomery, yeah.
So there are some things out there more than just trots. I think
it's more of what you say, Kev, with the Zoom stuff. That's why it's not getting out, because they're not making actual physical visits.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It seems that there's clearly teams waiting for Tampa to be done.
Right.
I think Derek Lalonde is going to be a hot property.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't think anyone is interviewing as many people as Philadelphia has.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. And still, it's probably not fast enough for the fan base.
Yeah. Although I find it funny about how I've seen on Twitter this drumbeat about, they got to get a coach before the draft. It's silly if they don't. Like, what's the coach do at the draft? Nothing.
But they do need him before free agency.
So,
yes.
Well,
you
maybe.
Do. Well, I mean, because here's the problem.
I've heard that before, but
when you're a team that's limited with cap space,
but what you hear is players are always discouraged by if they think they heard it's a difficult coach and everything, and yet we've seen a lot of people sign in places where you're going,
that's fair.
Well, you're not a fit there.
Russ,
so
based on what we saw a previous draft when Joel Quenneville stormed out after Stan Bowman had traded Yarmulson, in some of these cases, maybe the general manager doesn't want the coach in place because he wants to do what he wants to do before he puts the coach in place.
No, and that's fair. They don't need to be at the draft. I'm with Kevin on that. But I will say this: there's an interesting thing. Like if Johnny Gaudreau really were to go to the Flyers, like some people were saying when we were at the combine, and he's going to get paid between $9.5 and $10 million. Kev, it's going to take a miracle just to be able to fit that cap space in for Chuck Fletcher. Like, considering
it really can't be done. Every time I ask somebody around the league to comment about that possibility, and they said, "Well, you're going to have to explain to me how they're going to do it because we can all look at their cap space." We
just did it for shits and giggles on the weekend, and I said, "Well, you're going to probably have to trade JVR and give some team a draft pick to take on the salary, and trade Travis Sanheim because he's got a year left in his contract, and that opens up over $11 million. But that only takes care of it for 1 year. Then the next year, deal with it again."
Yeah, that's what people have said. Plus, nobody feels that anybody would take the entire Van Riemsdyk contract, even though it's only 1 year.
Right.
It's still although I would argue, I'm of the mind that anybody can handle anything for 1 year. So
yeah, I think a team. Okay, and I'll use Arizona, but there are other teams in the same situation. I think a team, if they got a draft pick, say a second round pick, along with JVR to take that contract, and then at the deadline, if he's scoring like he did this year, which he scored 20 goals, they retain half. They could get a pretty decent return on JVR at the deadline. So it's a double whammy. They could get a double payoff. I mean, now if he drops off the face of the planet, then you're.
Would you do it for a second round pick though? I don't know if I would. That's a big.
It's a $7 million. Well, you have to think that the motivation for a team like Arizona or New Jersey or somebody like that is to get to the cap floor. And if you're not, that's one contract that gets you almost all the way to the cap floor. So that was motivation.
They'll get to the cap floor.
Yeah, probably.
So here's something I didn't know. Brandon Summerman, who's got a Philly website, reported about 5 days ago that the Flyers QO for Morgan Frost was $870. Now, it's up to Frost if he wants to negotiate with the Flyers up until June 25th to see if he can improve on that or becomes a free agent. I kind of wonder, Kev, for one thing, if I'm the Flyers, why can't you give him $1 million? Like, you're going to give $1 million to Owen Tippett. You might as well give $1 million to Morgan Frost based on what you hope he can do. He did make strides this year, but the worry here is, and we did hear some murmurs, Mike and I heard a few murmurs at the combine, was you kind of wonder now if Philly would trade Morgan Frost's rights here.
I mean, we'll have to see. I don't know. Would you leave over 130,000, 65,000 real money, take the agent share out of it?
He might if someone like another team says, yeah,
I think that I have no idea of who his representative is, but any good agent would be doing their due diligence to find out if other teams out there would be willing to offer a little more. I think it's a situation where Morgan Frost with the Philadelphia organization, because we know Philly likes their big players, and when it comes to smaller players, it seems that they have a more difficult time. His path in terms of a future in this league may not be with Philadelphia. It could be with a team like a Seattle, who would give him more of an opportunity, or other teams. So
maybe even Pittsburgh.
So he's an RFA, right?
No, if he doesn't accept that offer, he becomes a UFA at, I think, age 20. He's a 10.
Didn't they make him a qualifying offer?
You can't qualify. You can't qualify this 10.2 RFA.
Oh, he's a 10.
He's a 10 too.
Okay.
They did give him a qualifying offer to work off of the negotiations.
Yeah, then they don't care about him.
Right.
I didn't know he was a 10 too. If you make,
but the idea is this is a guy who made strides this year.
Well, then they simply just don't care. I mean, if he stays, fine. So.
And if he's a UFA at age 22 or 23, I know one team for sure, and I won't say the name of the team, but I know one team for sure that would be interested in him based on.
I'll tell you, I think Pittsburgh would be interested because Hextall's the one that moved up to get him in the draft anyhow.
Yeah, I think there are other teams out there too, but yeah, he'll get more than $870,000 on 1 year.
That's my basic point. Is once I saw that number, I'm like, okay, he's going to beat that number, and now I kind of think he may not be back in Philly, which. Again, he made strides this year. I think that's a mistake.
And Russ, I'm pretty sure that if a team, say Pittsburgh, offers him a 2-year deal, then he's an RFA after the 2 years because he didn't play. He's still
because he didn't qualify to be an RFA.
Right. Exactly. So
that's where 130,000 could make a difference if he gets $1 million per year for the next 2.
And how much would it stick in the Flyers' craw if he signs with Pittsburgh and becomes a success?
Yeah.
Okay. We touched on the first series, Rangers in Tampa. Kev, the experience of watching Game 3 of Colorado Edmonton. Russ and I watched it at a local establishment on Saturday night, and it was hilarious to see the byplay on social media of how Mike Smith played. And I can just Travis Yost, who does analytics for TSN, was the best quote. He says, essentially, if Mike Smith has a .920 save percentage in the playoffs, that just essentially shows how inexplicable that statistic is, because Russ, he was flopping all over like a dead fish.
Yeah, Kev, I made a tweet. I said, there hasn't been a place on the ice that Mike Smith hasn't flopped on in this game.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Colorado Avalanche's offense is,
it's incredible.
It's so dangerous. Like, I still don't think this was a goaltending series. Like,
no,
we all know that that the Oilers goaltending is flawed, but I that didn't. What cost them is the fact that Connor McDavid, is not enough, and because when he was unable to score, and Devin Taves and Makar and their defense just stepped up, and they did the best they can, and that's what that cost them more than their goaltending is the fact that they don't have enough beyond Connor McDavid. So.
Well, and this is what Mike and I were talking about when we talked about Colorado being able to throw waves of lines at you. JT Compher, who I always thought is a really good player, is never going to be a great player, has 5 goals in his last 6 games.
Yeah.
I mean, NHL playoff tradition.
Yep.
The tradition of the unsung goal scorer. I mean, it happens every year. So,
if I didn't think it was possible for somebody to out Nazem Kadri, but Evander Kane did, because early in that game, after Connor McDavid scores that incredible goal where he beat Francouz, I think it was like a minute and a half into the first period, all the momentum was going Edmonton's way. And you can overrate momentum, but in a Game 3, when you're down 2-0, you need to ride the wave. And they score an early goal, and everything's going their way. And Evander Kane, showed his lack of hockey IQ by slamming Kadri into the boards, getting a 5-minute major, now has been suspended for a game. Kadri, apparently, they won't confirm the injury, but it looked to be, from watching the replay over and over, a broken hand. And the report from Jared Bednar, was he'd be out the rest of the series and perhaps longer. Well, the series may only last another game, Kev, but the first address Kane, because I don't, he's been a revelation in the playoffs. I think he has 12 goals. They got their money's worth on a short-term deal. If Edmonton signs this guy to a long-term extension, they're nuts, because you get this kind of stuff.
Well,
Possible time.
I'll get back to that, but because I have a question that'll be a hard one for you to answer.
Okay.
But I thought it was hilarious how many people on social media used the "he had it coming" defense.
Oh yeah.
It just made me giggle. Just people just,
and most of those people were from
it was a bad play, but it was a dumb play, but
most of those people were the 416 area code.
Yeah, all that stuff. But here's the hard question, and I actually asked this of another general manager around the league who thought, he goes, "That, my friend, is an interesting question of why general managers get paid a lot of money." So you're Ken Holland. And Connor McDavid, who's not real happy with the way things are going, comes into your office and said, "I want Evander Kane next year." What do you do? Now, you can real easily say, "Well, we don't want that guy on our team." But what if Connor McDavid asks you to get him? Because I think it's relevant. I think it's relevant when you got a guy that plays like he plays.
It is relevant.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question.
What I would say, if I was Ken Holland, what I would say back to Connor McDavid is, okay, but we can't sign him for longer than a year or two. We got to treat him like the Canadian Alexander Semin. Because if you give him a long-term deal, he gets comfortable and he gets complacent and he gets stupid, which is and so you say, we'll try, but it's only under these parameters. And if he doesn't accept those parameters, then we're not signing him.
I think that's an intelligent answer, and I think that's what they would do. They would say, "Look, we're willing to do what we can, but we can't give them a 6-year deal."
No.
Right. So, plus they don't really have the cap space to do that anyway. So,
true.
But I do think it will be interesting because I think you got to treat Connor McDavid the way Ken Holland treated Nick Lidstrom, and it's one of the most fascinating things ever. And it allowed Lidstrom to get rid of his agent, because Ken Holland basically would say to Nick, especially near his career, "Tell me what you need, because I'm going to give it to you. But before you tell me, let me walk you through all of our finances about who we're paying what to and everything else." And Nick would come in and Holland would lay it all out. And when he was done, he'd say, "What do you need now?" And Lidstrom would say $8 million. And Ken said, "Done." And that's how they would get the deal.
That's good. But the guys aren't always as reasonable as
No, it doesn't work with everybody. But I think with Connor McDavid, you've got to say, "What do you need, Connor?"
Right.
What do you want me to do? Because I think
that's fair.
There aren't that many players you should do that to, but I think Connor McDavid's one of them.
Yeah, and
what about Kev? Tim Peel tweeted that the Nazem Kadri injury is karma. How do you feel about that?
Well, as an ex-referee, he just buries himself, for saying that kind of stuff. But, I don't know.
Hey,
that's the same as he had it coming defense.
I know, but he's a referee.
Yeah, he's a referee. I agree. Yeah.
And Russ, you saw my reaction in the moment.
I did.
Okay, and there's nobody, being a formerly a fan and now a reporter covering Nazem Kadri and knowing him as well as I do, covering him for 6 or 7 or 8 years before he got traded and going to Colorado. My reaction was that Kane out Kadri. He did something more stupid. Kadri hasn't done that this year because he's going on a salary drive. Kane did it because that's Kane. I don't think it's karma. I Kadri did it in the moment a few years ago because I think his hockey IQ on the ice and his judgment sometimes is just questionable. He just happened to be on the receiving end of the stupidity that he has done in the past, and that's unfortunate for him because the Colorado has a good chance to win the Stanley Cup, and he may not be able to carry the cup with two hands if he has a broken hand. So. So that game is tonight, and chance for Colorado to sweep. Now, Kev, the one thing I and Russ and I disagree on this. I don't know what the future on Darcy Kemper is, but in spite of them winning that game and him shutting out Edmonton in game 2, Pavel Francouz, and I'm hard on goaltenders. I didn't think he was good on either one of the goals that he gave up against Edmonton. The McDavid goal was a 5-hole goal. The goal by Ryan McLeod was a good shot, but I think he should have stopped it. That's maybe not going to hurt them against Edmonton because Edmonton's flawed, but it is going to hurt them against the Rangers or Tampa because I think those teams both have superior goaltending. And as we've seen in the playoffs, goaltending means a lot.
Well, yes and no. If you score, like nobody's got an offense like Colorado's.
No.
So their offense is better. So it'll be interesting to see. And, as long as the defense plays well, I think their goaltending it will be good enough. It isn't going to be great. It won't match them, but I think you can win the Stanley Cup and not have the better goaltender.
True.
So,
okay. Great show, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For the departed Eklund, for Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.